In this section, we will learn more about testing in dbt. In software engineering, testing is essential to ensure that the code performs as expected. Similarly, in analytics engineering, testing is crucial to verify that our SQL transformations generate a model that satisfies our expectations. In dbt, tests are compiled into select statements which are executed against your materialized model to confirm that they comply with your assertions. dbt offers two types of tests: singular test and generic test. In dbt, a singular test is a SQL select statement saved in a SQL file within the test folder. A singular test is designed to make a specific assertion about a model and its columns. The term singular is used because it is intended to validate a distinct and separate condition or attribute of the data rather than multiple conditions or models. This type of test represents the most fundamental and individualized approach to testing, highlighting its direct correlation to a specific model and assertion. In dbt, a generic test is a parameterized SQL query combined with Ginger. It is defined within a special test block and can be referenced by name across various YAML files. Generic tests can be applied to models, sources, snapshots, and seeds, making them versatile and reusable without the need for custom tests for each element. They are also adaptable because they can take different input parameters, making them a flexible tool for various data validation scenarios. dbt comes with 4 predefined tests out of the box. We already learned how to use 3 of them, and in this section we will learn about the 4th. See you in the next lecture. dbt comes with 4 predefined tests out of the box. The first one is the unique test. That means no 2 columns should contain the same value. The second one is a not null test, which means that the value inside this column should not be null. The other one is the accepted value test, and the value in the column should be contained inside the provided list of value. And the fourth one is a relationship test. You can see it over here. This test will validate that all the records in a child table have a corresponding record in a parent table. This property is referred to as referential integrity. In data modeling, referential integrity ensures a consistent relationships between tables. For example, we can add a relationship test to the customer staging table. So inside the staging folder, we go to the tpcds subfolder and then choose our model file. Over here, we have to add another column. We will declare the address of the customer and give it a description. And then we'll add a relationship test to the column. So test. The relationship test takes 2 arguments, the field argument and the to argument. The field arguments specify the column of the related model that should match the test column, and the to arguments specify the model to which the customer model is related. So this test will ensure that the customer addresses always exist in the address table. So in our case, that means that every value inside the C current address column should match the C address column of the customer address model. And we can test that with dbt test -- select and then the name of our model. The test is successful, meaning every single address ID in the customer table is also present in the customer address table. But the reverse is not necessarily true. We can add the customer address to the model file and also test that. Somewhere down here we can do that. I'm just going to add the values over here. You can check out the source code and then you will have all the details. We have the customer address model. It has a description, a markdown description that goes over multiple lines, and we want to add a relationship test to the customer address primary key. It should be not null, it should also be unique, but now we are saying that every single value in the primary key column should also be available in the customers table, which does not make any sense. So we can save the file and then simply test both models. For example, I can do dbt test -- select. Now the names of the models I want to test. Copy this, put a comma over here, and then copy this. Now make sure that you don't have any space between the model names. Now we can execute that. Now you can see that one test passed and the other one fails. So the one from the customer table passed and the one from the customer address table failed, which is okay. And this is how the relationships out of the box generic test works. You will specify a field and a model to which the relationship exists, and then run dbt test and see if your data is matching your assumptions. In the next lecture, we are then going to see how we can create custom generic test, which means how we can create our own test that can be applied inside a model file and also to every single column. We can write our own generic test, which are then called custom generic test. Just like the out-of-the-box generic test, custom generic tests make it easier to create logic at one place and then apply it on multiple models. And the custom generic tests are also stored in the test folder, but under a subfolder called generic. Let's create some generic test. Let's create a custom generic test to ensure that a timestamp is always in the past and not in the future. Generic tests are located in the generic folder. Therefore, we go to the test path and then create a folder called generic. Then we create a file with the name timestamp is past.sql. And now you can add the following SQL to the file. With this piece of SQL, we are just filtering for all sales timestamp that are in the past. So the current timestamp obviously should be higher than any timestamp existing in our table. To make sure that this is a correct SQL, we can preview the data. And here you can see all the records that are in the past. Which means in theory, if you apply this piece of code to any timestamp column, it's going to return every record with a timestamp that is in the past. Now we have to convert this into a generic test. We have to wrap this piece of SQL inside a test block. And because I'm inside dbt cloud, I can do underscore twice and just create a block. Now I'm going to change the name of the block to test. And down here, we must change this to end test. Then copy this piece of SQL right here. Now we have to give our test a name, and we are just going to keep the same name as the file. So time stamp is past. There are also some standard arguments that each generic test should have. The first one is the name of the model the test is being applied on, and the second one is the name of the column you are using the test on. So the name of the column that you are testing. Therefore, we have to do like this and then do model and then column name. Next, we then have to adapt our query so that it use the arguments instead of the hard-coded value that we have in there. So we will start with this one, from. It should select from the model and not from any references. So right here I can remove this and just type in model like this. So select from the model, and where the column name is less than the current timestamp. Now you can apply the timestamp is passed to any column, given that the column type is a timestamp. So we can go to the mat file over here, and in the store sales model, we can scroll down. You have this column, the sales timestamp, and now we can add a test. Time stamp is passed, just like that, which means dbt is going to apply the test that we defined over here on this column. Let's run that. Dbt test minus minus select, and we want to test the store sales model. Execute that. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about dbt, check out our comprehensive online course. In the full course, we cover everything from the basics to advanced techniques, ensuring that you become proficient in dbt. And if you are interested in unlocking the full potential of dbt, click the link in the description below to access the complete course. Thank you. Now you can see that the test failed, which is a little bit weird, but it makes completely sense. This is because when you write a test, you make your assumption that your SQL query that you are using should only return the records that are failing your assumption. So if you are assuming that every single record should have a value that is in the past, and if not, the test should fail. Therefore, you have to find something that is greater than the current timestamp. And if that's the case, that means there's an error. So I'm going to reverse this. The main reason for this test is to find any record that is not in the past. Therefore, you have to find a timestamp that is greater than the current timestamp. So we can save this and execute the test again. You can even look into it. You can take a look here. You can see that it found 2,600,000 records that are failing the test. So we can click rerun, and now the test should pass because we changed the comparison logic. Fantastic. And this is how you create custom generic tests in dbt. However, oftentimes when you want to write a test, you should make sure that the test that you want to create is not already existent in a dbt package. There are several packages that offers a great test suite, meaning they have a lot of tests already written, already tested, and that follows the best practices in dbt. Therefore, in the next lecture, we are going to learn how to use dbt packages to test our projects. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about dbt, check out our comprehensive online course. In the full course, we cover everything from the basics to advanced techniques, ensuring that you become proficient in dbt. And if you are interested in unlocking the full potential of dbt, click the link in the description below to access the complete course. Thank you. dbt packages are a great tool to increase your productivity. dbt packages allow us to spend more time focusing on the business logic and less time implementing code that someone else has already perfected. In this lecture, we will see how we can test our model using a popular dbt package, the dbt-utils package. Let's get started. To use the dbt-utils package, you have to add it to your dbt package file. Over here, you have the packages.yaml file that contains the packages that are installed in our project. And to install a package, you can go to the dbt hub, and on the main page, you will see all the packages available. We select dbt-util. You come down here and simply copy this piece here, which is how you install any dbt package. You specify the name of the package and the version that you want to use. We go back into our project, put it here. Let me remove this. Exactly specify the name of the package and the version, and then save that. So because we are inside dbt cloud, you don't have to run dbt dependency manually, but if you are using dbt core, you have to type in dbt dependencies for dbt to install the package inside your project. And once that's done, you can see that the packages that are installed, dbt-utils and dbt code generation. You can even see that there are updates available for the dbt code generation package. I can also update that right now. What is the newest version? 1011. We go back here, we have 10. So let's do like that, and our packages are up to date. Now, to see all the tests that are available inside the dbt-utils package, we have to go again over here, pick dbt-utils, and we can then view all the tests that are available in our package from GitHub. You can see over here we have some generic tests. And to learn how you can use the dbt-utils package, we are going to use the expression is true generic test. It is this one over here, and it asserts that a valid SQL expression is true for all records. For example, we can use that to make sure that the age of all customers is above or below a given value. And just as any test inside the dbt-utils package, over here you will have the usage, meaning an example how to use it. We'll use the expression is true generic test to make sure that all customers are of a certain age. For that, we go inside the mod folder and take the model file. And now you are simply going to add a test to the model and not to a specific column. So down here we specify test, and then the name of the test. When you are using a dbt package, you have to specify the name of the package and then the test from the package that you want to use, which means in our case, we have to do dbt-utils and then the name of the test, expression underscore is true, and then specify the expression like this. And then you can use any valid SQL code here as expression. So I can do the following. So what I'm doing here, I'm using the dateDiff function, which is going to take the current date and the birth date of a customer. It's going to take the year part of the two dates and then do a difference on that. So do a subtraction and create the difference between both dates. And then if the date is greater than 18, it's going to say true. If not, it's going to say false. So we are testing if this expression is true. So for a record to pass the test, the customer must be older than 18. So we can save that and then test this model. And then we do dbt test customers. And you can see over here that the test was successful, which means every single customer in our data model is older than 18. Of course, we can try to find if anybody over there is older than 180. I hope not. If we then execute this again, then it's going to fail for almost every record. There we go, dbt test failed. And down here we can see that it fails for 93,859 records. So almost every record in our model failed the test. So let me revert this to something it's more probable. Let's do greater than 40, for example. Run this again. Now just a subset of the customers should fail the test. And this is how you can really use the dbt-util package to test any of your models. You should go over here and over the generic test, just look whatever you need. Not accepted values. It's almost the opposite of accepted values. But if you like to use something like not accepted values, you have to use the reverse. So everything in the world except for these two values. Before writing any single line of code to create a test for your model, I highly recommend you to first go and check if a package does not already have a solution for your problem. And in the next lecture, we are going to look into another great package that you can use. The package is called dbt-expectations. So let's use the next lecture. In this lecture, we will learn about another great dbt package. This is a dbt-expectation package. And the dbt-expectations package contains a large number of tests that you might not find in the dbt-utils package. As you can see down here, it contains a lot of tests, and the tests are also categorized. For example, for the shape of the table, some missing values, and so on. I recommend you to skim through this test before you write any test on your own. For example, in our staging model, we have the customer demographic table over here, customer demographic somewhere here. And here we have this test with accepted values, where we specified all the accepted values for the marital status. But what if the column is supposed to contain all possible values in the world except for, let's say, the letter A or B? In other words, what if you want to specify non-acceptable values? Then we can replace this test over here with the expect column values to not be in set. That is this one here, expect column value to not be in set. If you click on that, you can see how it works. You specify the name of the test, and then you specify the name of the values that should not be in the column. So I can simply copy this, and then we go back into dbt cloud. Let me comment this out. Then we add it here. So just as previously, you specify the name of the package that contains the test, and then you specify the test name. Now you have to specify a value set, meaning the set that contains the value that we don't want. So you say value underscore set. Let's say we don't want the value A and B to be included. With this, what we are saying is that all the values inside the CD marital status column are allowed except for the letter A and the letter B. Now we can save this and just test it. Let me do like this. And we can see that the test failed. And let's look why. You can go down here. dbt-expectations is not defined, which means I'm using a test without installing it. And then save that. And because we are inside dbt cloud, the command dbt dependencies is going to be executed automatically. Now we can go back over here and rerun our test. Interesting. Looks like something broke totally. Let me install dbt dependencies manually. Alright, now in the log we should see that all three packages are installed. dbt-date, which is dependencies for dbt expectation. Great. Now we have all the packages installed. We can then execute our test again. Obviously, we should install a package before we try to use it. And now our test is going to pass. And the reason why the test is successful is clear, because the marital status columns does not have any value which is A or B. So this is how you can use the dbt expectation package. You can go to the documentation, skim through the test, find the one that you want to use and simply apply it. Take a look into the documentation to see what are all the possible configuration of the given test and simply apply them. For example, if you look into the expect column value not to be set test, we can see that it also takes a row condition, which is a piece of SQL that you can specify to filter the rows to which this condition over here then applied. For example, you can say if the ID of the column is not null, then it's not allowed to have the following values. But you can also specify something else. Let us do that. So for that purpose, we can go over here and say, okay, everything is allowed, but not single. Then add a row condition to it. You want to use the following row condition. If the credit risk is high and more than one person depends on you, then we want to throw an error if the marital status is single. This is just a condition. Every other record not matching this condition here, but having the value S in the marital status column will not fail the test. So you can store this and then execute the test again. Let us expand over here. You can see that around 82,000 records are not passing the test. But if you remove the row condition, let me remove the row condition and then we can compare. Let's run that again. You can see that 380,000 records are failing the test compared to the 82,000 before. The difference between the two is that there was a row condition over here. So I can do that again and just save this. The dbt-utils and the dbt expectation package are a must-have if you are writing dbt models, and I highly recommend you to start using them in your project. See you in the next lecture. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about dbt, check out our comprehensive online course. In the full course, we cover everything from the basics to advanced techniques, ensuring that you become proficient in dbt. And if you are interested in unlocking the full potential of dbt, click the link in the description below to access the complete course. Thank you. In this lecture, we will learn how to create singular tests in dbt. In dbt, a singular test is a SQL statement saved in a SQL file within the test folder, and it is used to make specific assertions about a model and its columns. For example, let's say you want to create a test that ensures that a customer with a poor credit rating do not have the status of a preferred customer, as preferred customers typically have good credit standings. So what we can do, we can go inside the test folder and then create a new SQL file. We'll then give it the following name: preferred customer credit rating not high risk .sql, as it is supposed to be a SQL file. Now you can write a SQL that returns all rows where a preferred customer has a high risk credit rating. I'm just going to put that piece of SQL over here, and we can see that we are selecting the customer ID, the credit rating, and the flag preferred customer from the customer's model, and we are joining it with the customer's demographic. Down here, we filtered on if the preferred customer has a high risk credit rating and also has the preferred customer status. And we like that every time when a record like this exists in our dataset, we like a test to fail. So first, let's preview the data. And as you can see, these are all the records where the preferred customer status is true, but the credit rating is also high. And with that, we already created a singular test in dbt. All we really need to do is to put the SQL inside the test folder or in your test path. If you take a look into your dbt project.yaml file, you can see we have this test path over here. This can be any structure depending on your company or wherever you like to store your test. But inside that folder, you then have to put a SQL file that is going to be run every time you do something like dbt test. So as you can see over here, because we have this, that means if we execute that, the test is going to fail. Let's say I only want to run singular test type. Underscore test type singular. And because we have only one singular test in our project, only that one is going to run and it's going to fail with almost 12,000 records. If you like, you can go into the details. But that's it. This is how you create a singular test in dbt. You write the piece of SQL that you want to use to test your assumptions, put that inside the test folder, and every time you run dbt test, your tests are also going to be executed. And that it's with singular test. If you can write SQL, then you can write singular test in dbt. You put your assumptions inside a SQL file and then put that file under the test part of your project, and you have a functional test. The next lecture, you are then going to see how you can configure test in dbt. See you in the next lecture. Similar to models and other dbt resources, there are several configurations that you can add to the test in your dbt project. The test can be configured in a few different ways. As you can see here from the documentation, we can do it between the YAML definition, or we can add a config block to the SQL definition of a given test, or we can also configure test inside the dbt project YAML file. Down here you can see that there are several configurations that you can add to your test. We start with the severity configuration, which decides if the failure of a test is a warning or an error. And if you want to learn more about any other configuration, you can simply click on it, go to the corresponding page and learn what it means or how you can further configure it. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you how you can do it, and then you'll have to go through the configuration to learn all the possible way to configure it. So here we have our singular test, which check if a preferred customer has a poor credit rating. Usually you don't want to break your pipeline because of something like that. You want to issue a warning instead of an error, and then take some time to reclassify the data. Or you can simply go ahead and add a config block here, like config severity equal warning. And with this configuration, when a preferred customer has a higher risk credit rating, the test will not fail. Instead, you will get a warning. So let's save this and execute this again. Here you can see now the test is succeeding, but it is issuing a warning that we have some preferred customer with a poor credit rating. Previously, the test was failing because the default configuration is to throw an error. There's another important configuration that you should know about, and this is the store failure configuration over here. And with this, you are telling dbt that every time when an instance of a specific test fails, that the rows that caused the test to fail should be stored in your data platform. And as you can see here, store failures are saved in a new table with the name of the test. And by default, store failures will use a schema like dbt test underscore audit. But we can configure something else if you want. So let's see how we can apply the store failure configuration to our project. Let's say we go back over here, and this time we would like to use a YAML file to configure the test. So remember, there are multiple ways. We can use a config block like this. You can add multiple configuration if you want, but now you have to see how to configure a test inside the YAML file. So go back to this file over here. And let's say you want to configure this test to also store some failures. So what we will do, go down here and then add some config to our test. Store and true. With that, we are configuring this specific test to store any failure. And now let's execute that. I can do dbt test -s and then the name of the model. I already copied that. And then we can execute it. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about dbt, check out our comprehensive online course. In the full course, we cover everything from the basics to advanced techniques, ensuring that you become proficient in dbt. And if you are interested in unlocking the full potential of dbt, click the link in the description below to access the complete course. Thank you. We know that around 9,000 records are going to fail, but this time the records are going to be stored inside our data platform. We can see that the test failed. If you expand over here, go to the details, scroll down a little bit. Nope, I have to take a look into the system logs over here. Here you can see that our test failed, and then all records that failed were stored in this specific location. So I can just copy this and then go to my data warehouse and apply and run this query to see all the failed requests. We can do that. We go over here to BigQuery. First refresh here. And then you can see that a new data set was created. You have your default dataset name and then appended to it dbt test audit. And here I want to just paste the code from dbt and execute this. This is funny. It just return SS everywhere. Let's take a look into the dataset. And you can see that the name of the table is dbt-expectation. So the name of the package, expect columns, and some unique identity. Let us also add this configuration to our singular test. So I can also copy this. Store failures equal false. Go over here. Also do that. But I want this to be true. So I open over here. Test type is singular. And we rerun this. Now it's going to create a second table in that dbt audit dataset. Now let's refresh the content. And you can see we have a second table. And this time it's returning the records that we selected here. You can see we have the customer ID, credit rating, and here these are exactly the same columns that we are selecting inside our singular test, which means the reason why we are seeing only this value field is because in the dbt expectation package for this particular test, they are only selecting for this value field. And you can also figure that out if you go to GitHub and click on the definition of the test. Then you will see that. Let us just do that. This was this one. If you click on it, I think if I click again, I should land. And there you have it. Select the column name as value field. So this is everything that this specific test is selecting. And that's why after you start the results, you see something like value field. The fact that you can simply go to GitHub, take a look into the way that a test is implemented is one of the great reasons you should use dbt packages, because even if you don't find the test that you want to use, you can always look into something similar and adapt it in a way that you want. As already said, you can also configure your project inside the dbt project file. And for that, you can simply go down here, add test, do something like severity warning. This means every test in your project will not fail. Instead, you are simply going to get warnings. But of course, we have to scope the settings to our project. So you add the name of your project over here, and then a configuration severity is warning. And with that, every single test in this project is simply going to throw a warning instead of failing. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it's possible. And this time we want to test everything in our project. So we are simply going to do dbt test, and every test in the project is going to be executed. And this time you see all tests passed, but we then have 4 warnings. And that's how you can also configure your dbt test. Of course, we didn't go into all the details of every single configuration possibility, just because dbt has a great documentation that you have to go ahead and simply read. So if you take a look into how to configure a test, you can see we have some test configuration over here, like limit, severity, error if, warn if, store failure or not. Just make sure that when you want to configure your test, you go through them and look into what is really the option that you need and then apply that. I think the documentation is pretty clear about that. And if you have any questions about a specific configuration or how to apply it, you can always reach out to me and we will find a way to solve the problem. See you in the next lecture.